Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Oasis Focus on Finance show. I'm your host Shafiq Morton. As always, it's great to be with you. In today's show, we're going to have a look at those investment products that incorporate socially responsible and ethical investment objectives. We'll also take a look at a few examples and then show to you how these products can also benefit society. Joining me in studio today are Yaqoob, Osman and Michael Swingler. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Good day, Shafiq.
Michael, let's start off with you. Can you give us a definition, an overriding definition of what a socially responsible and ethical investment is?
Let's split it in two and deal with the two definitions separately. So in terms of ethical investment, the capital that the client invests is allocated to investments that meet a set of criteria. And that criteria that is morally acceptable are set up front and then invested only in investments that meet those criteria. If we then move to socially responsible investment, that is where the investment manager will not only look at the returns that can be achieved from the investment, but also look at the good that is done to society and how, if it's a company, how that company would benefit the society, and that can be the community, the immediate community, or it can be at the country level. So there's a combination of the objectives there in terms of the investment return and also enhancing society. Then you obviously get funds that can satisfy both. And the example here would be the Oasis Crescent range, and that would be called ethical, socially responsible investment funds, as the funds are socially responsible, but they also subscribe to the set of Sharia investment principles.
Let's move on to the potential advantages of such products. Tell us more.
I think if we start with risk, in terms of funds that are ethical and socially responsible, I believe there's a lower level of risk, and one can look at events like the global financial crisis, where there was a lot of volatility. So risk and volatility is a very important part of an investor's decision in terms of which products they would invest in. And if we look at the ethical compliance, that limits the involvement of speculation or prohibits the involvement of speculation where your investments are geared towards the market using things like derivatives. So from an ethical investment principle, if you avoid speculation, the actual risk or volatility would be lower. So that's the first significant advantage, because investors can have more peace of mind because there's a lower risk. The second one is the greater social cohesion. So if you're doing socially compliant investing, you get a investment into society, and that creates additional stability within the market or the environment that you invest in. And that's also very important for the longer term, because your investments operate within a social environment. If I look at the other side, if you are not complying with good governance and ethics, you are going to be subjected to regulatory scrutiny and also sanction. And that will have a very negative impact on the perception of a company, and it will ultimately impact the valuation of that company. So there, the benefit is that you're avoiding regulatory scrutiny and sanction. And then ultimately, ethical and socially compliant investments are commercially more desirable. So at Oasis, ethical and social responsible investment is a cornerstone of our investment philosophy. We're also signatories to the UNPRI, the Principles for Responsible Investment. So we take a lot of effort to ensure that the client's savings are invested in a way that we can create real returns and protect our investors from inflation eating into their savings, but also ensuring that we enhance that we are a catalyst for good corporate governance, sustainability, and long-term growth.
Now, Yaqoob, how have these products performed, bearing in mind that there are two things involved here? One is the principle of your investment, and the second thing is that there has to be a return.
Many people believe that when investing in accordance with clearly defined ethical principles, you have to sacrifice on returns. But as we have seen with a lot of our investors who have adhered to Sharia principles, have not sacrificed on the returns. They've actually seen higher rates of return over the medium to long term. A classical example of a fund that has consistently outperformed the market is that of the Oasis Crescent Equity Fund, which has produced phenomenal returns over the past 16 to 17 years. When we compare the relative performance of this fund to that of the general equity fund, we note that an amount of 1 million that was invested would have grown to 25.4 million. With the general equity fund, it would have increased to 9.4 million, which is a significant difference. What you see in this graph is that over the long term, the return that you have gained has not only kept up with inflation, but it has also delivered real value and growth. So basically, in this way, your investment is protected, it is kept within the ethical parameters, and the return has been really competitive. The best part also about the Oasis Crescent Equity Fund is that it goes further. Whatever non-permissible income is made within the fund is basically stripped out on a daily basis, and then is basically put into the Oasis Crescent Fund Trust, which distributes these funds to needy societies. So basically, in one way, Oasis and all of its investors are able to contribute to different projects. These projects include funding towards education, social development, and disaster relief.
Now, Michael, in addition to healthy returns on one's investment, we see secondary things flowing out of this. In other words, social benefits, society being able to accrue benefits from this as well. Just tell us something more.
I think it's important, the starting point is that business is interwoven into the fabric of society. Mm-hmm. And the investments that we make on behalf of our clients can be a catalyst for improving the health and well-being of society. And then that's ultimately going to result, as you've said, the benefits filtering down into the grassroots level. So I just want to use two examples here. If we use a company that not only looks after the profits, but also looks after their workforce and the community within which their workforce lives. And ultimately the benefit here is the company is more productive and there's increased growth, but that also means because you've got a happy and productive workforce, that also means that the country and the economy is more productive and competitive. But you also get the improvement in the infrastructure in the community. If the company is looking after the long-term needs of their workforce, you will also facilitate improving infrastructure, including education, healthcare, and community facilities. So that is where a socially responsible investment manager can influence the broader society. A second example that I would like to use is encouraging cleaner energy initiatives. And that's not just about creating a more a friendly and healthy environment for all of us. It's also about creating new jobs, because these are areas that you need growth and investment to put in the infrastructure for cleaner energy initiatives. And then thirdly, if we look at the ethical and social responsible investment funds, as Yaqoob indicated, if there is a portion of non-permissible income, that would go directly into charitable initiatives. So it can go indirectly by influencing the companies that we invest in on behalf of our clients, and the non-permissible component can go directly into charitable initiatives.
Michael, let's have a look now at the situation we sit with in South Africa and other countries. We do have some challenges, don't we, economically and otherwise. How can these investment vehicles contribute in their own way to the upliftment or to the improvement of our lot in these societies?
One of our biggest challenges, and this is globally, is that the gap between the rich and the poor continues to increase. And this is also evident in South Africa. Fortunately, in South Africa, we've had a significant investment in social grants in the last 20 years. And if it was not for that, the inequality would have been much worse. So this increase between the haves and the have-nots, ultimately it creates social instability. And that is a big risk for South Africa, and we need to work hard against that social instability and closing that gap. So ethical and social investment can play a big role directly through the contribution to charity, and that would be targeted at communities where upliftment is required. And that can be a very positive contribution. But we mustn't forget the indirect contribution of ethical and socially responsible investment, where investment managers can influence the companies. And there you get a broad impact as well, because the companies operate throughout South Africa, and they've got operations that spread across the country and influence those companies to create jobs and then to look after their workforce and to invest in the communities. So there's the direct through charity and the indirect, which can be a significant catalyst to address this problem of this increasing gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Yaqoob, let's look at some specific instances. Ramadan is approaching us. It's a very spiritual time. People are going to pay their fitrah at the end of the fast. People might pay more sadaqah or more charity, or they might even decide to disperse their zakah, which is in effect a purification of wealth. How do these vehicles affect the whole landscape? How can they affect, or what potentiality do they have?
As you have just noted, there are many different forms of charity in Islam. These include zakah, lillah, sadaqah and fitrah, all of which contribute towards the improvement of our society. For example, with zakah, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, encourages compassion and social justice to fellow human beings who may find themselves in an unfortunate state or situation. This form of charity is payable at a rate of 2.5% on the value of one's personal wealth, and the distribution of this charity leads to the purification of one's wealth. In addition, the act of giving combined with God-mindedness will lead to a fair and sustainable society. With the Oasis Crescent range of products, we inform you on the amount of non-permissible income that is given or donated to a charity on your behalf. These donations are done on a yearly basis, so they could form part of your regular zakah.
Let's extend this to the fact that zakah, lillah, sadaqah, all very important vehicles of charity. But how can these in the long term contribute to, let's say for example, sustainable development projects in society?
Shafiq, most definitely, lillah comprises of any type of charity that is given solely for the pleasure of the Almighty. Unlike zakah, which is compulsory, lillah is given on a voluntary basis. Sadaqah is also a form of worship that involves giving to charity. Like lillah, it is not obligatory and there are no conditions on the calculations and to whom it may be given. Across the various forms of charity that you have highlighted, it is always important to look at the sustainability of these initiatives, particularly in the areas of education, social development and self-improvement, as these are generally long-term initiatives. There is a famous saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Give a man a fishing rod and you feed him for a lifetime. Such forms of education and skills development lead to the empowerment of individuals, where you may see an improved self-improvement in individual as is able to make a meaningful contribution to the economy and the social and the society in general.
Michael, would you say it's important not to overlook the overall benefits that can accrue from socially responsible and ethical investing?
Most definitely, Shafiq. And here I'd like to bring inflation into the picture.
Our good old friend.
Yes. Just against looking at it from the investor's perspective, if you're not achieving a consistent real return, you will not be able to meet your investment objective. So that could be, to sustain your current standard of living when you retire, or to be able to send your children to the appropriate or your chosen educational institution, because those costs increase every year by quite a significant amount. So the real return and beating inflation, very important from the perspective of the investor's objective, but also important, as we've just discussed, from the impact that it can have on the society. So let me just look at an example of, again, the Oasis Crescent equity fund. If we take Mrs. Ismail making a 100,000 investment into the Oasis Crescent equity fund in 1998. That's one alternative. The other alternative could have been to put the money in the bank or keep it safely at home. But that's the worst place to keep it in terms of trying to protect against inflation. In 1998, when she made her initial 100,000 Rand investment, a zakah contribution of 2.5% would be 2,500 Rand. Assuming that she leaves that investment there over the years, if she left it in the cupboard, it would have reduced, because she's making a zakah contribution of 2,500 Rand every year. And therefore the zakah contribution would actually reduce as well. If you look at the needs of society, where that money is being utilized, whichever social need, there's a cost, and that cost would also be increasing by inflation. So as the zakah amount reduces, the cost increases in terms of the charity that you are supporting, because they're also exposed to the daily impact of inflation. If we contrast that to the 100,000 investment in the Oasis Crescent Equity Fund, that would be worth around 2.5 million Rand today after the 18 years. So the real cherry on the top here is her zakah contribution today would be 62,500 Rand. And that just shows you the benefit of a compounded real return that's achieved in an ethical and a socially responsible manner. And just imagine the kind of projects that can support today. If you look at that growth in zakah from 2,500 Rand to 62,500 Rand today, that's a massive impact that it can have on society.
Now, Michael, tell us, Oasis has been a vehicle of this ethical and socially responsible investment, and there have been many spin-offs as a result. Just give us some examples.
Shafiq, a lot of the focus of Oasis Group and the Oasis Crescent Fund Trust has been on education, healthcare, and disaster relief. So on the education side, again, big challenge in South Africa. And we need to start early when the kids are young. So an area that we've supported over the years has been the Center for Early Childhood Development. That has been a core area that we have made sure that there's significant investment. Tembaletu School for the Disabled, and then also Cotlands. On the healthcare side, the Groote Ski Hospital and also the Red Cross Children's Hospital. And what we are targeting is that the projects are sustainable, so that it's not just a once-off investment, that it's a multi-year investment, and that the skills, that there's also funding to provide the skills to ensure that that project is sustainable over time. On the broad-based social welfare initiatives, there's been investment in the Beit Ul Aman Seniors Home, the Equal Opportunity Foundation, and then a community hearse program, a very innovative program which provides hearses to burial societies, and that is used to provide services in communities that are not able to afford that service. Lastly, the Oasis Group and Oasis Crescent Fund Trust have also made contributions to humanitarian efforts, and that's in areas that have been affected by natural disasters over the last 18 years.
Michael and Yaqoob, thanks for chatting to us about the benefits that can accrue from ethical investing. Thank you. And that concludes this edition of Focus on Finance. A special thank you to our guests, Michael Swingler and Yaqoob Osman. Should you wish to watch this or any of our other shows, you can log into the Oasis Crescent YouTube channel. Should you wish to contact Oasis, it's 0860 100 786 or info@oasiscrescent.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Shafiq Morton. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.